Serious? People who have personally survived cancer, what was the worst part you experienced between diagnosis and remission? I was 17 when I was diagnosed and therefore still places in a children's hospital. Knowing and seeing those young kids and then finding out their rooms were empty because they had died was devastating. Survivor's guilt haunted me for a long time. I walked past the children's ward when I was inpatient for a stem cell transplant. Seeing the young children going through what I was going through hurt bad. I am currently going through the first recurrence of my brain tumor. I'm 33, diagnosed 2015. So far the worst part has not been cranny, needles, labs, radiation, chemo, still undergoing, hair loss, or doctors. It's been the unknown, and not the how long do I got unknown. My mind will eventually evolve into complete absurdity. One day I will wake not knowing who my beautiful wife is, or recognize the playfulness of my own dog. I fall asleep every night knowing that when I wake up somebody else might end up being me. That's a crap hand, brother. I'm rooting for you. Definitely the initial shock and the mental aspect of it. You kind of drown it out at first, but you snap right out of the fog when a doctor tells you your form of cancer does not respond to radiation and there is a 50% success rate post-surgery. That scene from 50/50 where Joseph Gordon-Levitt balls in the car the night before his surgery with me. That panic was so realistic and that scene still hits me. I'm very thankful I was on the right side of that coin flip and can say 9 years later I am still cancer free. Frick cancer. Surgery, chemo, and radiation all sucked, but the waiting after each test post-treatment to see if the cancer had returned was the worst. That fear never goes away. Exactly, well said. I've been cancer free for over 20 years now and I still panic at the slightest pain, ache or something not feeling quite right. It's heck on earth and I don't know of any cancer survivor who doesn't experience this fear too. I don't dwell on it, but just when you least expect it, it rears its ugly head to scare you half to death all over again. Diagnosed with testicular cancer 3 weeks ago today. Already had to get one of my balls removed. Now I'm going into chemo for a couple months. Stage 2. Looks to be developing lymphoma. The worst part is probably that I might go sterile after this. I'm only 22. My parents are in the midst of a messy divorce and it cost $640 initially to store sperm and $200 each month after that. Not to mention I was working 30 hours a week and going to school full time. Part of my chemo treatment is 4-5 hours of chemo on Friday every third week, and once a week in between. I have to maintain 12 credits if I want to keep doing research in quantum computing, but I can't work out because they need people in the small team. 4 guys support call area for school. So financially I'm good with insurance, but what about rent, eating healthy, staying active and not going insane trapped in the house? I used to live a healthy and high-paced lifestyle. The hardest part is putting everything on hold for 3 months for treatment in which I might not recover. I'm in good spirits and curative treatments have high success rates. But dang, my life is getting all jacked up now. Shows how easy humans can get thrown astray. Sorry for the novel. Venting. Hyper-awareness of my own and my loved one's mortality at age 18. I have never let go of the overwhelming feeling of vulnerability in the looming threat of inevitable death, and it still affects decision making on a daily basis. In remission nearly 5 years now. This is insanely accurate. We all go at some point. But to be forced to deal with that truth at a young age robs you of joy and hope. Glad to know you are in remission. The entire thing was a blur from the time I observed the tumor on my tongue and did the research and realized what was going on. I made it into my doctor a few days later, was sent to an otolaryngologist the next day, and scheduled for surgery the following Monday. The worst part prior to the surgery was my wife in tears thinking this would spread or already had and that I'd be dead only 2 or 3 years into our marriage. Or maybe the worst part was looking at the survival rates on the CDC website. It suggested about a 50% chance of making it 5 years. But then again, most people who get these tumors are in their 60s or 70s. The worst part after was probably the trip to the radiation therapy clinic. At first it seemed cool. They give you a bathrobe to keep, snacks, and do their best to make you comfortable. I filled out all the paperwork and was optimistic. But as I finished it I heard the anguished moan of another patient. As it turned out, the PET scan and everything else looked clear. The margins of the recess were clear, and then the only bad part was periodically checking in with my otolaryngologist for the next 5 years and having him stick his fingers in my mouth and probe my neck. Supposedly I'm as likely as anyone else to have that form of cancer again, but my wife worries. A new doctor felt lumps in my thyroid several weeks ago requiring an ultrasound, but all was good. My wife is still shaken up by everything to this day. I was 29 then and I just turned 40 now. I never did get that bathrobe. In hindsight, that is the worst part now. The worst part of my cancer was the effect it had on my wife and children. I brought a black cloud into my home, one I'll never be truly rid of. No, you didn't bring a black cloud. Crap like cancer isn't something any of us did. Colon cancer in 2005. Spent a truly horrible summer being misdiagnosed at various emergency rooms. Finally had a doctor spot the bad symptoms. Then there was a mad rush to get a scope. Then off to a surgeon to schedule the colon resection. All of that was mostly a blur. My single worst moment, where I actually cried, was getting the line put into my arm for the 6 months of chemo I was about to endure. It somehow made it even more real than the dozens of staple stitches in my stomach. It's been 12 years now. Yay for me. Yay for my doctors. Yay for Canadian healthcare. I'm so happy to hear you are doing yay. Yay for you and an internet hug of joy from a stranger. Yay. I was diagnosed with a rare form of liver cancer at the age of 18. Actually around this time 2016. After a year of treatments, mostly chemo, I'm finally beating it. The worst part for me was the psychological toll. I never would have been able to go through this without my family's help. My stepmom took care of me throughout the entire time, coming into my room at 5 AM because I couldn't sit up in bed because it hurt so much, coming to my appointments 2 hours away, doing all the research on the cancer. As I was saying, the psychological toll sucks. I lost a ton of weight, and with that, self-confidence. I was looking like a Holocaust survivor. I couldn't stand to look at myself in the mirror. I was quickly diagnosed with depression. I started seeing a psychologist. That helped. He was the only one I was totally honest with. Cancer's a B. Don't do it alone. Find someone who knows what you're going through. Everyone will say they understand and be helpful, but you need someone with a history. Mine was a friend I met while in the military. I'll be that guy, but try to get someone you know personally. PM me anytime you need help. I'm trying my best. Good luck, dude. I'm sorry you have to go through this, especially at your age. You and your stepmom sound like really good people. There are a lot of crappy things, but for me it was the psychological toll it takes on you. If anyone going through it wants to talk, just PM me. I'm going through chemo ATM and I have no idea how people can stay positive at a time like this. Losing control of my body at 23 is the most depressing feeling I've ever experienced, and people expect you to be positive and happy and smile through it. How the frick? Stage 3 rectal cancer. I'm out of work for a year while I'm in treatment. Abdominal surgery is a huge thing to recover from, and they couldn't start chemo until I was fully healed. Surgery in May. Started 8 weeks of chemo at end of July. Was hospitalized for intractable vomiting and pain with each infusion. I'm now halfway through radiation with chemo that's every weekday. After I recover from this, I have 8 weeks of chemo. With my immune system becoming so compromised from the chemo the first time around, I'm prepared for the worst. What sucks is the financial drain on my family. We rely on every penny that comes in the door as we live in an expensive area. There's no way I can work while in treatment. I've thought about it and it's just not possible. That means my poor brother, who's a full-time musician, has to come up with the entire rent each month. He's cobbled together 6 different ongoing gigs and it's a huge drain. He's always running from one gig to the next. And then my daughter gets to do all the makeup housework that I don't have the energy to do. It's especially bad when I have a humiliating ostomy bag failure. I have an ileostomy, so its output is very liquid. I've had to leave events early because the adhesive suddenly failed on me and my clothes were a disgusting mess. Guess who gets to do the laundry? And that stuff is considered a toxic substance because of the chemo. Ugh. I can hardly wait to be in remission. I want to tend to my garden, which is suffering. I want to work and have money again. I want to not feel like crap every day of my life. I don't want to die. I send my sincere warm thoughts to you. The image of gardening is so positive even for a healthy person like me. So, thank you for giving me that, and I am sure it can be really useful for you while going through this tough time. I believe in you. Finding out and then repeatedly having to tell people sucks. You're put in this weird position of having to console them over and over again. It ranges from incredibly emotional and difficult on a bad day, to really annoying on a better, more cranky one. This is wildly less significant, but when I did chemo they put me on Neulasta, a drug that stimulates white blood cell production. My experience was that stimulating your bone marrow to produce white blood cells kind of makes your bones feel like they're swelling from the inside. That crap was also no bueno. If anyone is on it, I took some allergy medicine, like Allegra or something, and it made a huge difference. Oh my god, I had almost forgotten about the process of telling people, making those calls and them freaking out, me being kind of numb from saying so yeah, I have cancer 80 times, them crying, me consoling them. Frick, I hated that part. Girls, pay attention. I'm 23 and noticed my period pain was more intense than usual. This went on for 3 more months. Since it wasn't unbearable I ignored it. Then my period came a week early twice. I went for a checkup and they found a tumor. Even my doctor didn't think it was ovarian cancer due to my age. She left it there for 3 more months cause she thought it was benign. Another checkup, it grew a lot. She decided to take it out with surgery. A week later the lab results came in and it was cancer. Stage 2. She took it out but I'm going through 6 rounds of chemo. Currently on round 2. Even the slightest change in your body can be a sign. Do not ignore any change, no matter how insignificant it can be. If I would have listened to the first or gotten a second opinion maybe I wouldn't have needed chemo at all. And chemo is by far the worst experience of my life. Getting a serious bladder infection. Post-stem cell transplant that had me in the hospital for almost 3 weeks starting just before Christmas. It was a known side effect of some of the drugs involved, but it really hurt to urinate, and it was about every 30 meters due to the massive amount of saline being pumped directly into my body to try and flush it out. I could not get any sleep, and at one point they installed a 3-way catheter to flush and collect so I could sleep. Throughout all the 2 years of chemo, remission, relapse, radiation, and transplant, leukemia, the pain of the 3-way catheter, and being in the hospital away from my family and young children at Christmas was the worst, most painful memory. The 3-way catheter only lasted about an hour before I had them remove it. Sleep was not worth it. Second would be the bone marrow biopsies. Not so much pain, but just a very uncomfortable vacuum-like feeling in your bones. That is hard to explain. My Sil's father is going in for his stem cell transplant in a couple weeks. He's just into retirement with a whole bunch grandkids. This Christmas was hard for them, and I know the isolation post-transplant will be tough. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 15-16. I'm 34 now. A certain round of chemo would give me nosebleeds that wouldn't stop because my platelets level was so low. My friends took me out to rent movies and video games on my birthday, and in the grocery store my nose started to bleed. It was like a leaky faucet that just would not stop. It looked like I slaughtered a chicken in their bathroom sink. Maybe this wasn't the worst, but it was one of the more memorable stories from treatment. Hi, this is Jenna from Oncology. Your doctor wanted me to arrange a few tests and a procedure. Call me back. Oncology. What the what? It's all good now, but like, it would have been nice to not find out via voicemail. The fakeness was a big one. Seeing people come out of the woodwork I had not talked to in years to tell me they're sorry or they feel bad or God bless or sending prayers. Where were they when I was healthy? Like, it makes them feel better to be able to say they know someone who had beat cancer. Also the helplessness with family. It's surreal from your own perspective. You're gonna most things doctors say and just hope. So I was less sad and more in the moment. But seeing how it freaked out my parents and grandparents was much worse. Lastly, being alone when I was told. I lived in Vegas across the country from family. I went and just cause my balls hurt. 10 hours later I'm being pulled into surgery to have a testicle removed, and it happened so fast I didn't sign off parents' access to medical records so they could not tell them anything. So having no support and the immediate diagnosis was rough. I was 19 when I got Ewing's sarcoma of the rib. The worst part for me was my body betraying myself. Nobody could tell I was sick from external appearances, so people just assume you're a healthy 19-year-old man. Traveling means being prepared to crap your pants or throw up at a moment's notice, and when you're in college it's extremely embarrassing to throw up in class or on campus near your peers. I had to rely on public transport to get to the hospital and back, and every day was a question of whether I'd throw up on the bus and have peers watching me. I was often judged and ridiculed for taking seats reserved for the sick, elderly, pregnant. This, mixed with the hallucinations brought on by the opioids I was taking, meant that I could barely trust my mind, let alone my body, from embarrassing me in public. Due to one of my surgeries I had lost all movement of my left arm and had to relearn how to use it, which took months. I had breathing problems which made walking up and down stairs too hard, so I had to take elevators for minor excursions, like one floor up or down. Often I'd get judged by random students because of this and get called lazy. One time I was accused of being a skinhead while I was walking down the street. I assume it's because I'm a young white man with a shaved head. With all of these poor interactions with the general public, this led to more isolation and depression for me because I didn't want to be seen or go out and be judged. Whoa, people are kind of buttholes. I'm sorry you went through all that, and I hope you're doing better now. Well, none of it was fun. I had to have a leg amputated and then a double thoracotomy to clean up my lungs. Funny enough, the amputation wasn't bad at all. Sure, I miss my leg, but the immediate thing I felt upon waking up afterwards was relief. Bone tumors hurt. The thoracotomies were the worst pain I've ever felt. I could hardly move, and I have some rather gnarly scars now. But I think the worst was when my idiot brother gave me strep while I had my immune system wrecked from chemo. My mouth and throat felt like they melted, and it was the only time I legitimately thought I was going to die. But I think the worst was when my idiot brother gave me strep while I had my immune system wrecked from chemo. See, and stuff like this is why I get absolutely furious when I see people visiting hospitals, nursing homes, or immunocompromised relatives when they're sick. Oh, but it's just a little cold. Yeah, maybe it is for you, man. Thinking that it might have spread, I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer at 15. Had a complete thyroidectomy followed by radiation therapy, then another round of radiation at 18. But when I was 21 I had a PET scan and they found a mass behind my breastbone. For a few weeks I was walking around thinking they hadn't caught it all when I was 15. That whatever they'd missed had metastasized, just every bad scenario, and I'm already prone to catastrophizing. Turned out it was just my thymus gland hadn't shrunk after puberty like it was supposed to. No cancer. Compared to that, finding out I still had some cancer cells in a nodule in my neck that I had removed at 26 was a walk in the park. But I've had 3 clean ultrasounds since then. Blood work doesn't show anything either, so I'm in remission now. Typo. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer as well back in 2013. A thyroidectomy and radioactive iodine later. This year I've learned it has come back. My surgeon said it's too small to operate on at the moment, so we just continue to monitor. It sucks to constantly feel worried about it and also to worry about good insurance, the cost of it. I was 12 when I was diagnosed. 2 years of chemo. There was a lot of pain, and seeing my parents having to deal with it was hard. The worst part for me, at the time, was the nausea and having to take upwards of 20 pills a day. I was horrible at taking pills. It was a struggle with each one because I would gag so easily and sometimes throw it all back up. I'm 27 now, and the worst part is the chemo stunted my growth and I'm still dealing with long-term effects to this day, and likely always will, but at least I can take pills like a champ now. You are a champ. Pelvic radiation hands down for me. Torturous burns in the most tender areas, and it becomes the gift that keeps on giving as the side effects worsen over time. I had ovarian and uterine cancer at the same time. I second this. The internal and external burns are pretty bad, and the lasting damage is always there. Pain. Psychological, physical, and emotional. Nothing in my life seems quite as harrowing as the lucky 5 months I had to endure treatment, opposed to yours. Your family suffers, your body suffers, and you won't know if you'll see freedom until the worst of it is over, and once it's gone, you will feel a looming fear it could return. This sums it up all too well. When I was getting the bone biopsy, the person doing it didn't numb the area well enough. For those not in the know, getting this done involves the insertion of a small corkscrew-like device that drills into one's hop bone to get a sample of the bone marrow. Well, I felt every bit of that going in and it hurt like heck. The thing is, it was better to just have him finish than to have him try again. I was crying and screaming from the pain. This isn't the experience for most people though. I had a new tech who didn't do a proper job. The next worst part is the mental frustration and feeling of tired of being sick during chemo. My chemo regimen was call-out shop, and I had it done every 3 weeks. The week I received treatment, I was stuck in bed. The 2 weeks afterward, I actually felt okay enough that I asked my workplace if I could come in to do some work. I'm a desk jockey, so it isn't very taxing physically. They thought I was crazy and said I should be home recovering. But I felt somewhat normal and felt I could be doing something, anything. This was actually a big deal for me in that it helped me have some semblance of normalcy. I didn't feel like a burden to anyone, even if the work I was doing was minimal. Just having the day-to-day routine of going into work helped me a lot. Oh, and the part where my wife was cheating on me while I was receiving treatment was pretty crappy too, but I didn't find that out until afterwards. We're divorced now. I'm 8 years cancer free. Bone marrow biopsies suck so badly. They can be uncomfortable or they can be the most painful, excruciating, awful things in the world. I have had about 8 or 10, can't remember, but Jesus freaking Christ, they are cruel. I also was screaming and crying so loudly. I feel you. I mean, a lot of people seem to be mentioning the effect on family, and that was definitely one of, if not the worst parts for me. A more unique thing I'd like to mention is that during my time as an inpatient, I was spending the night alone in the ward and Channel 4 decided to air a documentary about depression. I can't remember what the main message was supposed to be, but it was presented in quite a blunt way, and I remember a lot of people basically telling the camera quite frankly that they knew they'd die alone, and they didn't know what they were living for anymore. I've always been quite a negative person, and I think I was avoiding thinking about a lot of the more far-reaching effects of the cancer because life was a lot more day-to-day, but I know that with the chemo's emotional unbalancing effect as well, I spent quite a while just sort of blubbering to myself and really thinking about if I wanted to come out the other end. So yeah, that wasn't so great. I'm in remission now though, or they said that the tests aren't detecting anything large and they don't have ways of catching anything too small, and appointments are 3-6 months apart, so I think I'm basically clear, and managing a lot better, even if I still have bad days. Honestly though, it could have been far worse than it was. While my diagnosis and going through all the treatments were very difficult, I think the hardest part for me is actually life after cancer. My cervical cancer diagnosis came out of nowhere and totally caught me off guard, so that part of it was quite a whirlwind. I went into survival mode and simply did what the doctors told me to do. But now that I've been in remission for a while, I've had time to dwell on everything that happened to me, and it really sucks. I had a hysterectomy, so I can't have children. The radiation severely affected my body internally, and I'm in early menopause which has caused some osteoporosis. I'm also 33 and single. I've basically given up on ever finding romance, because really, who is ever going to want to be with someone in my position? All I ever really wanted was a normal life, but now that will never happen. I got robbed of a lot of typical life experiences, and it makes me very sad. Not sure this will help, but wanted to reply anyways. I'm a divorce lawyer and I've seen so many people find love again even when they thought they had tons of reasons for why it would never happen. I know it's strange, but I really think there is a lid for every pot. If you want a lid, hang in there. Hard to pick a worst. Vomiting so violently I tore the growth plates off my lumbar vertebrae. That really sucked. Becoming allergic to alcohol for a short period also was alarming. One sip and I would come out in hives so badly I had to be hospitalized. Hearing the cries of a baby going through chemo next door. During the night, the waiting game between treatment and seeing whether you are going to get better. Writing your will as a teenager is awful. Being unable to walk up a flight of stairs without having to lie down afterwards. The constant fear that you're going to die. Being told there's a 30% chance you won't make it out of treatment. Getting stuck on the toilet as you're so weak. Finally, slightly off topic, but something I never see mentioned in this thread and similar is the PTSD one gets after it's all over. I went through some horrific crap and for 3 or 4 years afterwards I would get flashbacks or repeat my previous experiences in my sleep. A truly horrible nightmare. I strongly agree with the babies. When I had it the first time, I was the oldest one in the peds clinic. Those babies fresh from the oven with more tubes at one time than I had during my whole treatment was like being stabbed in the soul. I would say the psychological effects. You're told you're sick, but don't feel sick at all. Then you start doing the treatment which makes you feel really sick. You lose your hair. Certain things about your body changes all due to the treatment, all which you were given when you were feeling fine. Then you beat disease but then told there's a 50% chance of it coming back within 5 years. You live with that fear. Then you debate to yourself if you're willing to go through all that again or just let it eat you away if it does come back. I would never wish cancer on my worst enemy. It's such a horrible thing to go through. I'm a 29-year-old woman and was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer in July of this year. In August I had a left side mastectomy and 30 lymph nodes removed from underneath my left arm. I had my 7th round of chemotherapy, out of 8 total, this morning and will be going through 8 weeks of radiation treatment after my last chemo infusion. My mother passed away from breast cancer less than a week before my 19th birthday. She had been in and out of remission for over a decade, so I was acutely aware of what was to come when I received my cancer diagnosis. The hardest part of this for me is that I've had to completely reassess my life. My husband and I spent close to $8K out of pocket to preserve embryos in case the chemotherapy makes me infertile, and I've been having an ethical dilemma on whether or not I should even have kids in my situation. I've had to work from home because I'm prone to infection, so I go days at a time without leaving my house. I used to consider myself a reasonably attractive woman and now I look like E.T. with one tit. I'm constantly terrified that I am going to end up like my mother. I have changed mentally and physically. I am a different person now and I've found it incredibly difficult to cope with the loss of my former self. It's not much, but no, I'm rooting for you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.